4 days ago, Detroit prosecutors charged 3 people with murdering a man named Robert Harbin, 42 years old, shot 7 times while sitting in his truck, less than 48 hours before he was supposed to walk into a courtroom and testify. Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy stood at a podium and said something that I need you to hear. She said, "Almost nothing is more serious than the murder of a witness. Nothing raises the hackles of a prosecutor more. In this case, it is alleged that these defendants thought the road to acquittal was the elimination of a witness. The elimination of a witness. Now I want you to sit with that for a second, because 5 weeks before that press conference, 5 weeks before Detroit was reminded in the most public, most documented, most official way possible that people in this city get killed for what they know, a man named Michael Brown was shot at 4:30 in the morning and died across the street from 2 people who survived the same shooting. Those 2 survivors have never been publicly identified. They have said nothing on the record. His wife has said nothing. His oldest brother has never appeared publicly. And the Detroit Police Department, which runs the surveillance infrastructure that its own chief publicly calls a game changer, has produced 0 public output on this case in 38 days. 1 city, 1 6-month window, 2 dead men, and a silence so structured, so complete, so consistent across every person who should be talking, that it stopped feeling like coincidence a long time ago. Tonight we connect it. If you are watching this for the first time, go back and watch Part 1 and Part 2 of the Mike B. Brown case on this channel first. Everything you need to understand who this man was, what he built, and what was happening to the land he built it on is already there. What I'm about to give you is what those 2 videos couldn't give you yet, because it wasn't time. Now it is. If this kind of work matters to you, the kind that refuses to let a story go quiet just because institutions stop talking, hit subscribe right now. Click the bell, like this video, and let the algorithm know that Mike BS name deserves to stay in circulation, because the only pressure that works when the system goes silent is public pressure, and you are the public. Let's go. Here is what Detroit's law enforcement infrastructure actually looks like from inside, because you need to understand it before you can understand how loud the silence in this case really is. The city pays $7 million for a 3-year contract with a gunshot detection system called ShotSpotter. Between 2024 and 2025 alone, that system triggered 24,225 gunfire incident responses across Detroit. Not 24,000 over a decade, over 1 year. The system is wired directly into what the department calls its real-time crime center, a room where officers sit in front of live surveillance feeds, ShotSpotter alerts, license plate reader data, and facial recognition software, all feeding in simultaneously. Sitting alongside it is NIBIN, the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, which processes shell casings from shooting scenes and generates investigative leads by matching the ballistic signatures of bullets across different cases. In 2025 alone, NIBIN generated 2,932 investigative leads for Detroit police. In January 2026, Police Chief Todd Bettison stood before the city and celebrated those numbers. He said ShotSpotter helps close cases. He said it tells the truth. Now, Schaefer Highway near Fenkell Street, where Mike B. was shot, is a commercial corridor on Detroit's west side. It is not a dark country road. It is a lit street in a populated part of the city, surrounded by businesses, at least one of which was operating with people inside when the shots went off. A commercial corridor in a city with over 1,000 Project Greenlight camera locations feeding directly into that same real-time crime center. A city where the chief just publicly celebrated the technology's ability to close cases 23 days after the most high-profile shooting on a ShotSpotter-covered corridor in recent memory. Detroit police have not said the cameras found nothing that night. They have not said NIBIN came back empty. They have not said facial recognition returned no match. They have not released a vehicle description. They have not released a suspect description of any kind. They have said in its entirety, the investigation is ongoing. Please call Crime Stoppers. That is the full public output of 38 days of investigation using a $7 million surveillance system into the killing of one of the most well-known people in the city. That silence is not neutral. It is a data point. And it tells one of only two stories. Either the technology captured something that investigators are protecting, because they're close to an arrest, or the investigation has hit a wall so complete that even the machines aren't giving them a way through. Both of those stories are disturbing in their own way, and the public has been told neither. Let me tell you about the Board of Police Commissioners, because this is a part that nobody is reporting, and it changes the entire frame of what that silence means. The Board of Police Commissioners is the oversight body for the Detroit Police Department. Their job, in theory, is to know what the department is doing and hold it accountable. And in December 2025, 2 months before Mike B. was killed, a board member named Linda Bernard said something on the record that should have stopped everyone cold. She said, "We can't provide oversight about something if we don't know what it is. And we don't know what it is or where it is." She was talking about ShotSpotter. The city's own oversight board admitted publicly that they cannot tell you whether this technology is working in any given case, because they don't even know where the sensors are located. The police department knows which neighborhoods they asked ShotSpotter to cover. They do not know the exact locations of the sensors within those neighborhoods. That information belongs to the private company. A court found the city repeatedly violated its own surveillance transparency ordinance to secure that contract. And in June 2026, 2 months from now, that contract comes up for renewal. So here's what we actually know about the system that was running on the night Mike B. died. It is expensive. It is celebrated publicly by the chief. Its oversight body cannot verify what it captured or didn't capture. And in the most visible homicide of the year so far, it has produced nothing the public can see. The technology exists. The question is whether the will to use it fully, transparently, in this specific case, exists alongside it. Now I want to talk about the silence that is closer to home, the human silence, because this is the part that true crime gets wrong almost every time, and I want to be careful with it. Mike B. Brown's wife has not made a public statement, not in 38 days. His 5 children, obviously, are not expected to speak. They are children, they lost their father. That is grief and not a story. But the rest of the public architecture of this family's response is striking in its absence. The balloon release outside Sloppy Chops on March 8th. The funeral on March 13th at Triumph Church in Southfield. And then nothing. No attorney appearing on their behalf. No coordinated public push for information. No press conference with the kind of community pressure that usually follows a high-profile Black death in Detroit. His younger brother Myron made one appearance in week 1. He stood before cameras and said, "My brother took care of a lot of people. He provided a lot of jobs. Now I just ask that you guys help him out this one time and speak up." That was 5 weeks ago. He has not appeared publicly since. And then there is the oldest brother, the one who was 10 years old when their father died and left Mike B. 5 years old himself, to grow up understanding what it means to live without someone you depended on. That brother, who has known Mike B.'s entire world for 52 years, who live inside the same web of relationships and history and nightlife and business that Mike B. inhabited, has said nothing, not one word in any public record. I want to be honest with you about what that could mean, because there are multiple honest explanations, and I'm not going to pretend I know which one is true. The first is the most hopeful. Investigators asked the family to stay quiet because the case is moving and public statements could damage it. This happens routinely in active homicide investigations. If it's true, the silence is progress, not failure. The second explanation is that the family knows something or suspects something, and the weight of that knowledge has made speaking publicly feel like a risk they are not willing to take. In a city that just charged 3 people with executing a witness before he could testify, that is not paranoia. That is pattern recognition. That is what it looks like when a community is watched over years and decades. What happens to people who talk? The third explanation is legal. Estate matters, property questions, business transfers that require quiet resolution before anyone goes on record about anything. And the fourth, which I will not linger on but also cannot omit, someone communicated to people who love Mike B. that going on camera is not a safe decision. Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy said this week that witness intimidation is among the most serious charges she pursues. She has the receipts. Detroit has the documentation. That fear is real, it is documented, and it shapes behavior in ways that look From the outside, exactly like what the Brown family silence looks like right now. I don't know which explanation is true. Neither do you. But I know that all have happened before in this city, in cases that were solved and in cases that went cold. Here is the piece of the story that has not been connected publicly anywhere, and it's a connection that brought me back to this case a third time. Robert Harbin was killed in October 2025. 3 people were just charged with his murder in April 2026. 6 months passed between the killing and the charges. 6 months during which the community knew something had happened. Whispers circulated, and the people closest to him stayed quiet. Mike B. Brown was killed in February 2026. It is now April 2026. 5 weeks have passed with zero public movement, and the community is quiet in a way that, if you've been paying attention to how Detroit handles its grief, feels less like indifference and more like a collective decision to wait or to protect. Now, I want to be clear about something. There is no confirmed connection between the Mike B. Brown case and the Robert Harbin case. I am not telling you they are linked. What I am telling you is that they exist in the same city, within the same 6-month window, and they share structural DNA that investigators in any serious homicide would be mapping right now. Both cases involve a victim whose death produced community silence. Both cases involve a law enforcement response that was slow to go public. The Harbin case resolved because the evidence, a Project Greenlight camera at a motel, a license plate reader near the scene, phone records tying the shooter to the man he killed for, was overwhelming and confirmable. The technology worked. The case closed. The question this case is asking is simpler than any theory. Why hasn't technology that closed the Harbin case said anything publicly about what it found on Schaefer Highway on February 28th? That question has an answer. Somewhere in the Real-Time Crime Center, in the Nebeen database, in the license plate reader records, in the facial recognition archives, there is data from that night. There always is in a city with this infrastructure. The data exists. The only variable is who is deciding you don't get to know what it says. In the meantime, here's what community is carrying while the institutions stay quiet. Mike B. Brown's 5 children are being supported through a GoFundMe campaign run by the Maintenance Bar through its Lifted in Love initiative. Tanya B., the founder, described it as more than donations, a movement to demonstrate communal care and uphold the legacy of a man who dedicated his life to strengthening neighborhoods. The campaign provides for his children's education, their growth, their everyday essentials, the things a father provides. His 5 children are growing up right now. Right now, today, while this video plays. They are living in a city that celebrated a drop in its murder rate to a 60-year low in January 2026. A city that made 253 arrests using ShotSpotter alerts in 2025. A city that generated nearly 3,000 ballistic investigative leads in a single year. A city that, according to its own chief, has a system that tells the truth. And his children are being supported by a GoFundMe because the truth hasn't been told yet. That asymmetry is not an accusation. It is an observation. And it is an observation that deserves to sit in your chest the way it has been sitting in mine. So here is where I leave you tonight. Not with answers, because I don't have them. With questions of specific, structural, unanswered questions that this case is still holding open after 38 days. When the Detroit Police Department says the investigation is ongoing, what does ongoing mean when your real-time crime center captured audio, footage, license plates, and potentially faces from a commercial corridor on the night of a triple shooting, and none of it has produced a public suspect description? Does ongoing mean progress? Or does it mean something else? When Mike B.'s oldest brother, a man who has known his world for 52 years, says nothing, not a word, not through an attorney, not through a statement, not through the family community, what does your instinct tell you? Is that grief? Or is it a choice made by someone who understands exactly what is at stake? When you compare what happened to Robert Harbin, killed before he could testify, case solved in 6 months using the exact same surveillance technology Detroit deployed in Mike B.'s neighborhood, does that change how you read the silence here? Does it make the community's quiet feel less like not knowing and more like knowing too much to say out loud? And when 519 East Jefferson, the address Mike B., built his name on in the middle of a corridor that $1 billion of development money is about to transform, eventually changes hands, Will anyone be watching close enough to ask who benefits and why now? Drop your answers in the comments. All of them. The theories, the fragments, the things you've heard that you don't know what to do with. Because the footage from February 28th still exists. The acoustic data still exists. The shell casings are in the knee-beam system. The license plate records are stored. The faces that those cameras captured are in a file somewhere. The information exists. Mike B. Brown's family exists, and his children are growing up in a city that owes them an answer. Subscribe to Mystora Crimes. This case is not cold, and neither are we. For Mike B., for his children, for Detroit,